Andrew Carnegie. You've probably seen his name everywhere, on libraries, concert halls, universities. It's a name that just screams wealth. And he was. He was a titan of industry who built an absolutely staggering fortune. But then he did something nobody expected. He gave almost all of it away. So the question is, was he a saint or was he a ruthless sinner? Today, we're going to unpack the incredible paradox of Andrew Carnegie.
Yeah, that's really the core question, isn't it? His whole life is a story of these wild contrasts. On one hand, you have a man who truly believed in lifting people up, but on the other hand, his business practices were known for absolutely crushing the little guy. So, which one was the real Andrew Carnegie?
And these two images right here, they tell the whole story. On the left, you've got this young, hopeful immigrant kid with absolutely nothing to his name. And on the right, you have this caricature of a Gilded Age tycoon, a king of industry. The journey from that kid to that guy is, without a doubt, one of the wildest stories of the 19th century. So to figure this all out, we've got to go back, way back. It's a classic rags to riches story, and it starts, of all places, in a tiny cottage in Scotland. This is where it all began, back in 1835. He was born into a family of weavers, but then the Industrial Revolution happened and machines basically made his dad's job obsolete. The family was facing actual starvation. So in 1848, when he was just 12 years old, they packed up everything and sailed to America, chasing that dream of a better life. So what did that American dream look like at first? Well, for young Andrew, it looked like this: $1.20 a week. That was his first wage as a bobbin boy in a Pittsburgh cotton mill. We're talking 12-hour days, 6 days a week. It was brutal work for a kid. But here's the thing you have to know about Carnegie. He was just relentlessly ambitious. And he did not stay a bobbin boy for long. Just look at this climb. A year later, he's a telegraph messenger. This was huge because he made it a point to memorize the names and faces of all the important businessmen in Pittsburgh. From there, he gets into the powerful Pennsylvania Railroad. And by the time he's 24, he's the superintendent. Every single step was about learning the system, making connections, and grabbing every opportunity he could. Now, working for the railroad gave him a front row seat to the future. And he realized that future, it was all going to be built out of steel. And that is where he would make his fortune. Here's the thing. Carnegie wasn't some genius inventor. He was a genius innovator. He saw this new thing called the Bessemer process, which was a revolutionary way to make huge amounts of steel, really strong and really cheap. He went all in, adopted it for his mills, and basically cornered the market. Suddenly, he could fuel the construction of everything, railroads, bridges, you name it, faster and cheaper than anyone else. His other superpower was a strategy called vertical integration. Think about it. Why pay some other guy for the coal you need when you can just buy the coal mine? Why pay a railroad to ship your iron ore when you can own the railroad? He controlled every single part of the process, from the raw iron in the ground to the finished steel beam. It gave him an insane advantage and completely crushed his competition. And this right here, this was the beating heart of his whole empire. And let's be real, he didn't build it by playing nice. He was ruthless. He used all those connections he made at the railroad to get insider deals and huge contracts, basically making sure they bought their steel from him and only him. And boy, did it pay off. In 1901, the great banker J.P. Morgan came knocking. He wanted to buy Carnegie's steel. The price tag? Over $300 million. That is a mind-boggling amount of money for 1901. In an instant, it made Andrew Carnegie the richest man on the entire planet. But this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. You see, after spending the first half of his life building one of the biggest fortunes the world had ever seen, Carnegie decided he was going to spend the second half giving it all away. Now get this. This wasn't some realization he had as an old man. He wrote this quote in a private note to himself when he was only 33 years old, decades before he became the richest man in the world. He was already convinced that a life spent just chasing money was a wasted life. He eventually took that private thought and made it public in a famous article called The Gospel of Wealth. His argument was pretty radical for the time. He said that if you're wealthy, you have a moral duty to use that money to help society. You're not the owner of that wealth, you're just its trustee, and your job is to build ladders upon which the aspiring can rise. And you know what? He wasn't just talk. He absolutely put his money where his mouth was. Over the last 18 years of his life, Carnegie gave away about $350 million. That was nearly 90% of his entire fortune. The scale of it was just unheard of.
So where did all that cash go? Well, his most famous project was, of course, the public library. He never forgot how, when he was a poor kid in Pittsburgh, a wealthy man opened his personal library to the local working boys. He saw libraries as a university for the people, and he wanted to pay that forward.
And his vision was massive. It was global, from Pittsburgh all the way back to his home in Scotland and beyond. He ended up funding nearly 3,000 public libraries all over the world. But he had one clever rule. He would pay to build the library, but the local town had to agree to fund its upkeep. He wanted them to have some skin in the game. But it wasn't just about libraries, not by a long shot. He also founded world-class institutions like Carnegie Hall for music and Carnegie Mellon University for education. He created an endowment for international peace, a fund to recognize everyday heroes, and he even set up pension funds for his old employees and for college professors. So a true man of the people, right? A real hero. Well, this is where the story gets really, really complicated. Because the foundation of that entire philanthropic empire, it was built on some pretty brutal business practices that seemed to go against everything he said he believed in. Okay, take a look at this. The Johnstown Flood of 1889. A dam bursts, a whole town is basically washed away, and over 2,000 people die. It turns out that dam was owned by a super exclusive hunting and fishing club for the rich and famous. And guess who was a founding member? Andrew Carnegie. His response after the disaster was to help fund a new library for the town. It's a shocking contrast. And then there was the Homestead Strike, which is even more infamous. The workers at his main steel plant went on strike, demanding better pay and safer conditions. Carnegie's manager responded by locking them out and bringing in hundreds of armed private security guards. A full-on battle broke out. People were killed on both sides, and the workers' union was completely crushed. The very fortune that was funding libraries for the poor was being built on the backs of those same people. And all of that brings us right back to our original question. Saint or sinner? Look, there is no denying that Carnegie's gifts changed the world for the better. Millions of people got opportunities they never would have had otherwise. But that generosity was paid for by a system that was often brutal and exploitative. So how do we balance the two? How should we remember a man who built a better world, but built it on such a deeply flawed foundation?